Episode
Welcome,
2!
episode 2. Why would you listen to a second episode of this? Terrible decision making on your part,
That's
not
true.
gonna lie.
Hey, at least it
But
could be the
thanks for
people,
coming.
it could be the people we asked to give us a second chance, The
Thank you
second
very
chance
much
is
for
actually
being
giving us a
here.
second chance.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming back again. And if, you didn't listen to the first episode and this is your first time here, actually get to hear us talk about something that's actually happened. Welcome to Evan and Freddie Talk Survivor. I am Evan.
I'm Freddie, and week 1 has actually finally happened now. The first 3 episodes of the season, so we have something to actually talk about this time, which is always good. And I think there's a lot to talk about because it has been a pretty big week and a lot of things.
It's been an exciting start, I will admit.
Yeah, there's been a lot of things happening, and I think it's rather interesting, honestly, because I think what both of us said in the first episode, I think we have a lot to talk about with our predictions and what we wanted to see from the season, because I think we both have a few things to say about that. But it's been an interesting first week in Australian
along
Survivor.
with that, some very interesting things have happened as well, in the actual show. So yeah, lots to talk about today. Hopefully we don't go on for too long. But I guess we'll start with episode 1. And in the very beginning, it kind of made me laugh
a
little because
I think the little
like the old Mad Maxy with the Outback, and it literally was Mad Max. Like, I'm not even kidding at this point. It was Mad Max. Like, you had all the Brawns in like trucks and utes and stuff, and all the brains in like these little buggies, and they like faced off, and it was like pretty cringe.
It was
like they ran with it.
And if you're watching it on YouTube, we'll play some of the clips over the top of the video. But
okay.
Yeah, getting fancy now. But yeah, the Mad Max intro was quite funny, and of course it always falls into the stylized sort of thing that Australian Survivor always has going. But I thought it was a bit of fun. I didn't mind it. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, it's just funny to see like our first sort of like prediction, already true in the first couple seconds of this show. But then, other than that, again, I sort of feel like the whole Brain vs. Brawn, at least from that point onwards, is still a little like overplayed a little.
Yeah.
Even by like the castaways themselves, because they're going like, "Oh, we're gonna beat these nerds" or whatever. You hear the Brawn saying them, and then and again, like even I think was his name Johnny or something? No, that's not right. He was like, "Oh, it's gonna be like Attack of the Nerds," in a challenge. It's just like, I don't know if the producers are telling him to like play it up a little.
I reckon that was definitely scripted. I think some of the parts where they're all just standing like at the challenges waiting, Jonathan's talking to them and asks them questions. That's definitely scripted. There's no way.
Yeah.
Because some of that, the trash talk bit at the very start of the season, before the first challenge, that was very funny. That was a bit interesting.
It sort of felt a little like, ooh, you know what I mean? But
it was strange.
Yeah, first challenge, started off with a challenge right off the bat, not even playing around with a challenge. I'm gonna say I didn't mind the design of it. It looked promising to begin with, at least with a sort of puzzle, and they had that whole sort of you can do this brawn bit, or you can do this brain bit, and then, a puzzle that requires brawn strength. And I thought it was fairly balanced. Obviously, the brains were a bit stupid going for the sliding puzzle, and then be like, oh, I can't do this, and then going for, like, the log after Brawn had already started on their puzzle.
I think everyone watching that knew that I think the log was always going to be the better option for either tribe, in my opinion. That's just what I saw from it. I thought the log would have been a better option either way. And then we saw, I think it was Andrew try and move on to the thing, and then just give up, and then just grab the axe and just start chopping at it.
Yeah, that was kind of dense from him, I will admit. Him just sort of walking up going, oh, what do I need to get out? Like, what do I need to slide out?
It's just like, fuck it, go.
I don't know, maybe the one with the pattern on top of it that's a little lower than the rest. And the fact that she couldn't solve that, she was trying to, I think from looking at, I think if she like tried to slide it through the middle and then across, it would have worked. They were literally right there at the solution. They just did one wrong step and they sort of ended up, screwing themselves over. And, the final rotating, bit in that challenge as well, I thought was very interesting. It had a good mix, I reckon, because you need the strength to actually move the things, but you also need to know what the hell you were doing.
Yeah.
And I think Brain did catch up a little. It's hard to tell with the editing how much they really did catch up.
Because
That's
it
one of the
looks
hardest
like
things
in
with
the
the editing.
episode they caught up like immediately. Like it looked like they did really well. And I think if they well, it looks like from the show if they had just been a little speedier on the challenge and Wei didn't sort of choke a little bit on the direction and they all weren't sort of because honestly, Brain's tribe, they were completely disjointed at the start of that challenge.
I mean,
they were so stupid. But Brain's
and
tribe.
all yeah, and already in that challenge, we started to see George rubbing people the wrong way.
Oh,
Like he
absolutely.
was down the bottom, yelling at, is it Why or Way? I don't know,
It's
telling her what
Wei.
to do,
Yeah.
telling her what to do, and that was the first one where his ego sort of showed its true colors. But
Yeah. I think
interesting character.
yeah, but I think the biggest problem with that challenge was how Wei choked and the whole tribe sort of at the start. Because look, I think and that's sort of when we started to see Wei get a bit of a target on her back because she got up there and hey, well one, no one was listening to her at the start of that challenge, which was stupid.
Mm,
Everyone was just down at the
yeah.
bottom just yelling amongst each other. Nobody could hear Wei. And Wei doesn't seem like a very loud person. So that was
Oh,
a
not at all.
mistake number one from the Brains tribe, and that doesn't set them up too well for future challenges. I think after that challenge they adjusted all right to working together, but that was
Yeah.
really not a great start for them, and we started to see some of the players assert themselves into the tribes. I think Brawn tribe worked so cohesively well. Like they were good. I
Hmm.
don't think you would have guessed if you just watched that challenge out of context that they had just all met each other and only had like what, like 5 on-screen minutes together.
Yeah, and Simon, I reckon, yeah, Simon really did pull his weight, I reckon, sort of in the sort of watchdog position as well in that challenge. I'm sort of, seeing, him seeming useful very early on, I guess, is what I was trying to say.
I
But
think a lot of
yeah,
them
and then
asserted
there was,
themselves very well at the start. You sort of were able to get a feel for most of the characters, I think.
mm, and then there was well, of course, the reward itself, which was the decision between the sort of survival kit and fire. And I
Good
know some
start.
people were criticizing,
I thought it was
their choice
fine.
of the survival kit over fire, but like in the long run, that survival kit is definitely going to, be more beneficial with like all that tarp and everything. Like all the brains still have is just a bark covering themselves. And
I
meanwhile, Braun had all this
hmm.
sort of, tarp and like nets and stuff that was pretty good, I reckon. And they ended up getting fire anyway. And it's like I don't know when they will. At some they will get a flint though, I feel. And it's sort of like that sort of survival stuff is going to last you a lot longer than just a little bit of fire will. Although of
I
course I'm underestimating how cold it really does get.
Yeah, because I think we saw that look, fire wasn't really an issue for either of the tribes too much. Brains obviously struggled a little bit with it. Not helped by the fact that George was being a bit of a tool. Um,
Well, what I was really like curious about is like why the hell did it take them so long to get fire when they have a literal survival expert on their tribe? Like I
Andrew.
thought his whole shtick was like, isn't survival 101 like the first basic you've got to master is making fire from just sticks, right? I thought that's the first thing a survival expert needs to be considered a survival expert, and yet it took him a week to get fire.
It was so I don't know, and another prediction that went wrong actually I found, Andrew hasn't promoted his tour yet.
He's actually been fairly silent the
I
entire
think
time. The only time he really got any airtime was the third episode.
yeah,
Uh,
which and also I think with the sort of celebrity aspect that we talked about last season, I think they've done a decently good job at not glamorizing it.
no, it hasn't actually seemed too bad. Yes, there are the sort of cringe
I still
moments
think
where
they
they sort
shouldn't
of
have done it
got the
like this.
B-roll footage of like everyone just sort of circling around, which is just
I
kind of
think I think
like
the
come on, man.
funniest B-roll I saw, there's two of them. There's the one of Baden where it's like going through his bike and he's like there with his arms crossed. And there's
Yeah.
one, I think it's Haley, I think. I think it might be Haley, who is just standing in the middle of the room with like the brain and is just like just
Oh, that was
eyeing the
that is a
camera. That
No,
was so
another bad
bad.
one.
Oh my god.
Another bad one. I think was like I think it was Emmett, and he's like sort of standing on like a little fence, and he's just like got his fist out like that towards the camera, and it looks so bad. But
I think
since you mentioned Baden, it was really stupid the reason he was on the brain tribe. Like, did you listen to them? Like,
they
he was like,
yeah, he's like,
oh,
you
when
gotta
you're
make a
cycling, you got to
million
make
quick
a million
decisions.
decisions a second. So it's like, piss off. Like,
It's
he's
so
obviously the
stupid.
densest person on that tribe, and he's there for balance. But it's
It's
just
so
like,
stupid.
come on.
And I don't know. I thought they'd lean more into the poker aspect if they're putting them onto the brains tribe, but no,
They didn't mention it at
no,
all.
they
They
haven't
didn't
mentioned.
mention it at all. It was,
Yeah,
they literally twisted. So on the website, it was like, oh, poker, good mind. And then in the episode, they decided to spin it like, nah, got to make a lot of smart decisions while riding a bike, otherwise you're screwed. And it's just like,
yeah. It's just so strange, so interesting. But I think, and with the two people I think stuck out to us on the brains tribe that should have been the Brawn, which is Andrew and Baden, unless we had someone else, but I don't think we did.
no, that was it. Yeah.
Well, especially those two is in their like little montage bits to introduce you to them. They haven't mentioned like any reason why they should be on the brains tribe. It's just like, oh yeah, I'm a survival expert, and like, oh yeah, I've done cycling, and we got to make quick decisions. Like they haven't justified their position on the brains tribe at all.
I reckon Andrew's a little more justified because actually getting a look at him, he's not really that brawny at all. Like, he's really skinny and scrawny. And, like, yeah, while he's, like, lean and muscular, he doesn't look like he has too much strength in him. And especially, like, he looks tall and light. Because, again, in that, I think it was second immunity challenge where they had to sort of lift them up to put the balls through the net.
Mm.
He was, like, first person they put up there because he looked super light and, it worked out for them. But yeah, so I don't think he's as bad, but Baden was just the most hilarious by far. Where it was like, yeah, a million decisions, each second. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, they haven't justified their position on the brains tribe at all. It's just so strange. And I think we might as well talk about the dynamic of the brains tribe now. Because I think in the first episode it was decently okay, but obviously we had Way sort of putting a bit of a target on her back with not being great in challenges. And
Yeah,
we saw that in the immunity challenge as well, where she was a bit of a dead weight, honestly, on the tribe because she's not very physical. She's not very physical.
No.
She is the brains player, which
course,
is like understandable.
She,
That's what
she
the
kind of
tribe
like,
is.
yeah, but she kind of choked a little in that aspect as well, I guess.
Yeah.
Especially in that first reward. Why can't I remember what the first immunity challenge was?
The first immunity challenge was just an obstacle course with something at the end, a puzzle. I'm guessing it's probably.
Oh no, yeah, it was that one where they slid down and there was all that dirt and whatever, and like
I don't know, and I guess that sort of plays into what I think we've both said about the challenges each night. One, they're not balanced at all. They're not that balanced.
That one was, not great. From what I can remember. Okay, at least the reward challenges have been terrible in balance. I guess we'll just sort of mention them all now because there's no real...
Yeah.
Instead of sort of, putting it off. Every single reward challenge has been that first one. But then the second one, it was literally wrestle some guy to get a bag in your thing.
There's no reason for that to be... There's no balance in that at all. It makes
There's no balance in that at all. Because the point is, okay, sure, if they're a little smaller, they can crawl through a lot quicker, right?
Yeah.
And which we did see the brains get through first a lot of the time. But the problem was, when I first watched it, I was under the impression that there was a bag for each tribe. And I thought, wow, that's pretty well designed. Because if they can get through first, it will require a lot more effort to catch up. No, there's one bag, which means you can just drag them into your tribe's square, right? Because if there were two, you've got the interesting dynamic of, okay, they've made it this far. I've now got to drag them back, get my own bag, and get my bag there first, right? And then that you get rewarded for being the first to grab the bag from the ground. But with just one bag, there's no reason for you to get there first, other than unless you totally demolish them like Emmett did, even though he almost flubbed that.
Yeah. And I've got a bit of a problem with Emmett has he stands at the moment, but I'll leave that until we talk about the Brawn tribe. But I think yeah, that the reward challenges haven't been great, and I think especially episode 3, Tuesday night's one, was
That
terrible.
was
Where's the balance? There wasn't any balance.
at least with the wrestling one, there was the argument that speed or whatever
Agility.
was some sort of agility, small size to crawl under things. That was at least a balancing factor, sort of ruined by this. Because I think what we've discovered from the Brawn tribe is it's not just anything physical they excel at; it's really just pure strength.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot more sense when you think about just Brawn, and you can't have because in other challenges there have been physical aspects where it's not just pure strength, and we've seen the Brains beat Brawn. Especially in the immunity challenges, they've sort of beaten them to the puzzle or whatever is at the end, most of the time. But these, that third reward challenge was just strength. Like, that was ridiculous. Not only did you need strength to throw the water into the trough, you needed strength to hold the trough up as well, and you also needed size to block the water coming through the trough. All three things which the Brain tribe doesn't
attributes.
Have. Yeah.
That reward challenge was terrible. And
at least
I think
the
that was
reward
really stupid.
At least the reward itself wasn't that great.
Yeah.
Of just tea and coffee, plus like the family shit. We'll talk about that later when we get to
we'll talk about that 3. In episode 3. But episode 1, I guess the immunity challenge. Of course, we saw the Wei was a bit of a dead weight, and I think that put her onto the chopping block for that night.
Yeah, and she knew that as soon as they got back.
She knew that, and I guess that's sort of where we started.
George knew that.
I guess we'll talk about George a little bit because he has positioned himself as the villain of Australian Survivor so far in this season.
I haven't actually seen him say in the show, but in sort of, I think at the promo after episode 2. They had some clip of him calling himself King George, which is fucking hilarious.
His Instagram handle is literally like King George of Bankstown or something. He's just a little. Himself. I'm not gonna lie.
Just a little funny thing. What if the whole reason he's on there is like a smear campaign from the Liberal Party? They're trying to look at this dickhead who works for the Labour Party. Vote blue.
Channel 10 is working with the Liberals. Or is Channel 10 working with the Greens? Next season we'll have an idiot Liberal on there.
Whoa.
We've cracked it.
He's like pro natural gas or whatever. No.
Yeah, but we've seen George get. He is the villain of the show so far, I'd argue.
Look, as much as a dickhead he is, I will admit he makes things kind of interesting.
Oh, he shakes it up a lot. Like, I want him gone, but also I see why he's fun to have on the show. But I also just want him gone. I really don't like him. I just don't like him.
But I don't like him as a person, but it's always entertaining because he always plays like the part of like insane dickhead who just makes things interesting just because he's an absolute cock.
Yeah.
And then also just like clown, like literal clown. Like whenever he's like, oh yeah, swap me in. Like I can be really strong and do this or whatever.
Okay. And we saw Baden confront George about that in episode 2, and George just completely crumbled.
That was the challenge. Now I'm remembering the challenge from episode 1 where they had the slingshots, right?
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
So I remember there was an interesting thing that I highlighted because George's whole plan for Tribal episode 1 was to get Mitch out, right? The doctor.
Yeah.
And they had an interesting thing they highlighted, which would have been interesting if Mitch ended up going, which he didn't. But there was a thing where they sort of butting heads off the side where Mitch wanted the person flinging to switch and George didn't. And arguably that probably ended up with them losing it because I think is it Johnny, the bald guy?
Isn't it Joey?
I'm struggling to remember all that. Joey.
Yeah.
I was close. Joey, I'm pretty sure, was slinging first and he hit one and he was probably getting into a bit of a rhythm. Mitch was like, nah, switch out, you're tired. And they highlighted that shot.
Yeah.
That ended up with Andrew switching in, and then they ended up losing because of that, because Simon just got in a rhythm, just sort of. Don't think back to back, but the editing implied that he did.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But yeah, that would have been interesting. It was an interesting thing to highlight to sort of smear Mitch a little, but he never ended up copying any votes really. So
Mitch didn't really get
he
any.
didn't
No,
he didn't get any at all. I don't think it was all
unfortunately,
Phil.
Phil was the one to go that episode, which is a shame because Phil is awesome. They are awesome. Um,
Phil's all, like, what, we got a response from him.
yeah, we shot an email over to Phil, see if we could get him on the show. I think Channel 10 and Endemol have everyone under NDAs until the end of the season.
But he was like, hit us up when the show's over. And so
Yeah,
like,
so
man,
we'll have
Phil's
some
a cool
post-show
guy.
interviews for the 7
Chilly
people that
Philly.
listen. Yeah, but
Yeah.
Phil was awesome. They were really cool. It was a shame to see them go, and their hat was awesome
Yeah.
too. Really love Phil's hat.
The crocodile hat. But look, there's the advantage as well, which is
Okay,
kind of,
we need to talk about that because I have very strong opinions on that.
look, why don't you lead us off on your strong opinions on the advantage?
I think first they're pulling out advantages and idols way too early in the show because we've seen Kez have an idol in episode 3.
Spoilers.
Yeah, well, I'd hope everyone's watched it because we're analyzing the whole week. But
Yeah.
we've seen two advantages in 3 episodes, which I think isn't that good. But specifically with George's advantage, it was episode 1.
It was episode
Come
1.
on.
2, it was hidden in plain sight.
It was so obviously producer planted just to stir shit up.
I don't know if it was planted for George specifically. The way it was shot insinuated that the advantage was there next to the well from the beginning, hidden in like right in the open, just on the ground. But they very well could have placed it just before George got there, and George only, to give George the advantage.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how.
At least from the way that they filmed the episode, it seems like it was there from the beginning, and it could have been anyone that grabbed it.
I think that's what they're trying to portray. I think that's what they're trying to say. But look, I thought that advantage way too early for something like that, and also, it was to save half of the tribe.
It was an overpowered advantage when you think about it. It was
way too overpowered. I think. Look, George and 2 others. I wouldn't have that much of a problem with it.
But George and 5 others?
Well, just anyone and 5 others. Anyone.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
Actually, the fact that it was George made it not that overpowered when you think about it, because George screwed up. Because if we look at the numbers like this, it could have. It had the opportunity to be one of the most overpowered advantages from the get-go, right? 12 in the tribe. You save 5 other people, including yourself, that's 6. One person gets voted out of the other 5. Out of the other 6, and then you've got 5 left, right? Now, if you aren't George and don't screw up your relationship with everyone you saved and actually get an alliance with them, from Tribal 1, you have a majority 6-5 alliance. The power that advantage had, if used correctly, which
would have been
thankfully
insane.
George didn't, would have been insane. If Mitch got that, I do not doubt that he would have already gotten a 6-5 majority alliance from the first tribal, which is that shouldn't be allowed, right?
Yeah,
like you should have to work for the advantage.
It was way too early for something like that. It was way too overpowered. Like, saving half the tribe is stupid. Why? It was pretty obvious in the narrative who was going home that night.
Advantages like that only work when it's a small amount of people, right?
It can't be half of the tribe, though. It should have been like 2 others. Yeah.
The drawback is it's weaker than an idol in the sense that you can't cast a vote still, right?
Yeah, and I think you can only use it that tribal, I believe.
Yeah, when you get advantages like that, there have been advantages like other seasons where I think it's just themselves they can take out of the tribal and they're safe, but they can't vote. But, when you're doing that with so many people, when you're doing that with half of the tribe, he could have even used it in another strategic way. Say he wanted, he already had a posse that he wanted to vote someone out, and then he knew what the opposing alliance was. He could literally just take them out and nullify all their votes, and then his alliance automatically wins. Like, the amount of different ways that could have been used to literally play that tribal council exactly how he wanted, and future tribal councils, is just it's ridiculous that they even thought of putting that in there. But thankfully, George screwed it up.
Yeah, and I think the people he selected to save as well were a bit interesting. Because we had him save Baden, and who's the girl that he saved? I can't remember her name. I don't think she's gotten too much screen time.
he literally said to her, are we talking about the one with the short white hair?
I believe so.
I
Yeah.
don't remember her name. Yeah,
Like,
he
but they
literally said
both
to her
looked a
the
bit
next.
like. They
But
both
he
looked
literally
like
said
they
to
didn't want
her
to be
the
saved
next.
by him.
Yeah, and he literally said to her the next day, like, "Oh, I saved all the weakest members in the
Yeah.
tribe."
And he said it
And she
so
was like, "Are you?"
loud.
I
He
know
said it
as well.
so. He made sure
But right
everyone
to her,
could hear.
yeah, right to her face. And he felt like he was saying something cool, like, "Yeah, you guys are the weakest. I saved you." But it really just that's what really was
It's
like.
just rude.
Like he screwed this up. He's not going to get the majority lines from the start. Like, thankfully.
Yeah, I
But
think he's really stuffed himself, and he's glad, and he is very lucky that Brains has won the other two immunities, because he would have been gone, just
yeah,
flat
I think
out.
they don't want him around anymore because he's just a bit of a dick around camp as well. At least when they were fishing in the third episode, under fire as well. At the time, I was like, "Wow, you guys started a fire while I was out on a walk." He was going like, "Oh, we shouldn't be blistering, our strongest people's hands to make a fire." Like, bro, shut up. Like, seriously?
It was so stupid, and I think something else he tied into, because a lot of his reason for saving Wei in the first episode was he didn't think it was fair to vote out the weak immediately. And I know a lot of people were sort of agreeing with him a little bit in that it's the Brains tribe. They shouldn't be voting based on physicality. But I think that was a problem that was caused by production when the challenges just haven't been balanced. So I don't think it's a problem with the castaways just going with the default of vote out the weak. It's the castaways seeing the challenges and going, okay, they are so obviously physically slanted. Wei is going to be no use to us, or Phil is going to be no use to us in this challenge.
Look, I want to debate that sort of physicality thing, just a little bit. Because while, yes, the reward challenges have been terrible,
The immunity's been okay.
The first immunity was not great at all. The second immunity was okay. In my opinion, the third immunity challenge was the most balanced they've had yet.
Absolutely, because they had the puzzle at the very start. It was very physical. It's
I was
not
very sad,
physical,
and there was also a lot of balance and dexterity required. At least in that little rope course in the seesaw at the end.
Yeah.
Because then again, we saw at least when Brawn couldn't brute force it with like pure strength.
Yeah, they were
Brains
struggling
literally blew them out of the water before they can even get to the seesaw, which is
Yeah.
insane. Like that. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Right, I guess we're going a little ahead of ourselves there.
But yeah, I think, and then Phil going home was a shame. Phil was awesome. I would have really liked to see more of them. I would have liked to see more of them.
Yeah.
Their hat was awesome too. Phil's hat was so cool.
And the fact that they gave it to the rest of the tribe to keep, like, whoo.
Yeah.
That was good.
Good on
that was good.
Good on them. But it's a shame to see Phil go. It's a shame, but I guess that's just the way it went. Because honestly, once George had saved his little attempted posse,
didn't work at all.
Yeah. God. Once he tried to do that, the mood in Tribal was a bit uncertain, but I think everyone knew that they were going to be voting out Phil that night, which was a shame.
Yeah.
But and Phil, thanks for responding to our email. But
if you do listen to this, thanks, Phil.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get to chat to you at the end of the season. But that wrapped up episode 1. Really cool. And I think episode 1 in general was a little bit boring. But
it's first episode. You can only do too much. You can't have any sick plays in the first episode, which is why I think they threw that advantage in there.
Maybe.
But George didn't really entertain all of its possibilities at all. He didn't strategically choose who he wanted to say. He just, he didn't even, I don't even know if he wanted to work those people. So it had the opportunity to at least be cool in sort of the players way of it. In challenges, it was boring because they were so kind of one-sided. Yeah. I think at least plays-wise as well, it was a missed opportunity on George's behalf.
I think we saw, episode 1, it's really a cast introduction episode. And,
yeah, for sure.
I think, because I think it really came to fix itself in episode 2. Because I think episode 2 was, in my opinion, the most exciting one of the week. In my opinion. I can see why people would disagree. I know a lot of people are saying episode 3 was the
I'd say episode
peak of the week.
As well.
But I thought episode two's tribal, I thought it was so glorious, but it ended so terribly. And
Well,
I guess we'll talk about that. Yeah,
we'll just start from the start of the episode.
where
Reward challenge. I think we already touched on how that was stupid. How they had to wrestle
yeah,
for that.
we don't need to
Again,
talk
at least
about that. Yeah,
at least
and
the
we saw
reward itself wasn't like too great. Like sort of honey and bread, and also
yeah,
had salt, oil, and some
it
other
wasn't
stuff. Like
critical.
it's not critical. Unlike the survival kit, it's nice to have, but also not a massive deal, especially when it's day 4 or day 3. Like
Exactly.
that's the other thing
I
I want to talk about a little bit later is how soft this season kind of seems. Like it seems
absolutely.
fairly
They
soft. But
are
I'll get into that. I'll get into that later when we talk about the next reward.
yeah,
So
but
that's what pissed me off the most.
I think yeah, I wasn't that keen on episode three's reward too much. But what I found with and episode two, we also started to see with the reward challenge, the beginning of sort of, I guess, the minor villain arc of Emmett. Because we sort of saw he's sort of like George, where he's very full of himself.
Well, George as well sort of made a fool of himself in that challenge as well, like volunteering to go up against Gavin.
Yeah, and we
Like,
saw
was
Damon
literally
confront
twice
him for
his
that.
size.
Yeah,
It's just like, bro, come on. But yeah, Emmett taunting, kind of a dick move. To be the sole reason for Janelle to want to boot Emmett, I don't know.
think that was right, but I could see why Janelle wasn't happy with it.
The way
'Cause
she
I
could
wasn't. I thought it was stupid.
I wasn't happy with him either, but I more wanted him gone because he also seemed like a genuine threat. Like out of the three, the three amigos at that point, Gavin, Simon, Emmett. Emmett does seem like the most dangerous. Simon is quite level-headed, I feel, but also predictable. Whereas Emmett, I feel, could be a wild card. Emmett, I think, is trying to be the next David.
That's what a lot of people have said.
The
But
way he acts is just like David. He tries to do those whole sort of like, yeah, we've got it for sure, bruh. Like it's like,
yeah,
like
but
you're not as good as him.
But also, like, he's tried to become the next David, but nobody is calling him the next David. Everyone's calling him the shittier David.
Yeah,
And
he's
there's
it was
that
just a
meme-
failed attempt.
There's that one on Australian Survivor memes where it's like brand name and it's David, and then generic and it's Emmett.
And it's Emmett, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like,
Emmett is no golden god. Emmett is absolutely no golden god, and I don't think he ever will be because David is such an iconic, incredible character.
I know, and
he was nice.
We know as well.
David was actually a nice person, unlike
Emmett's
what
just a
Emmett
dick.
has been edited to be so far. What we've seen of
He
Emmett
could,
so far.
yeah, he could not be like that. Again, it could be. We've always got to be wary with Channel 10, where it could be straight up editing to make him look bad. But at least that taunting thing, like,
That wasn't cool.
Look,
I think that was stupid.
it's not like I don't think he still could have lost it, being as close to his square as he could. He definitely could have wrestled it back, which we did. But the fact that it wasn't just game, set, match, he should have just dunked it in as soon as he had the option. He could have taunted for a bit, but like it was just stupid.
Yeah.
To
And
just sort of
it's-
stand there like, whoa, like. Oh,
And it's
right.
put that target on his back as well now because, people already aren't too keen on him. And we saw that heading into the immunity challenge that episode, which we might as well talk about because there isn't much to say about the reward. And post.
No, we're all just
Nothing happened in that area. We saw the Brawn tribe get a bit closer, and that's it. And that's also, I think, when I started to get a bit worried about the challenges as well, because of course the first reward in immunity, not great. The second reward, terrible.
Second one, terrible.
I started to
That
get
was when
very
I was-
worried about the challenges.
I was worried. We were wrong about the second immunity challenge. We said, I don't think they're going to have any massive water ones because they're not near an ocean. But obviously, they're near a big enough lake or basin or whatever
Yeah.
it was to just have a massive water challenge. Which is,
Look, it was
I'm not
fine.
complaining about. It's a good mix-up.
Yeah, it was fine.
Um,
I didn't mind it. We were obviously going to say something like that, but yeah. What was the second immunity challenge? God, I can't remember exactly what it was.
So they had to swim out and you jump and you go down sort of back flop and then
With the
with
barrels.
balls.
And then
And you poke the balls and you put the balls in the thing, get the key and you throw the key over and you do the
hanging
puzzle, right?
puzzle. Yeah, we
I'm just going to say about how much that pissed me off. Sorry,
okay.
just
Yeah,
The editing for the puzzle was terrible because they edited it like Brains was massively ahead the entire time, and then Brawn's quickly caught up, and it was close. When really, if I don't know if accidentally, but it was a bad idea to put the wide shots in when they were still trying to trade the narrative that Brains was far ahead. Because if you actually looked, Brawn was literally right at that tail. Like it could have gone either way.
yeah,
And I think the little advantage on time that Brains did had probably helped them win. And they sort of played it up that Janelle and Danny screwed it up badly.
yeah,
But they really didn't. It was really close. And yet the editing portrayed that it wasn't. And it kind of is just annoying to see that. Because, like, yeah, I get you're trying to make it, like, more entertaining, but it's just, like, really, that was really obvious.
yeah, yeah. I think, and the immunity challenge, I still couldn't have been as balanced as it could have been. But obviously, we saw the Brains take out their first immunity and their first challenge for the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which is good, and obviously that saved George that night. Um, but I just
Yeah, of
think
course.
I still think I'm getting a little antsy about the challenges still. Because that was still a very physical challenge with just a puzzle tap.
Still a lot of physical, but again, at least they didn't have the opportunity to sort of brute force it with strength.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
strength can only get you so far when you need to swim, and you also need at least the slight dexterity to poke out the balls.
Yeah. And look, I think it was a decent challenge overall, and of course it was nice to see the Brains take out their first win.
Yeah, of course.
And then I think once we finished off that immunity challenge, we started to see something really interesting form. But it was a shame because it all flatlined at the end. And
Again,
course,
it was
yeah,
it was similar to episode 1. That sort of whole narrative of things could be turned on their heads, and then they just weren't. Like editing plays it up. Oh wow, Emmett's really in trouble here, and then there was one vote thrown to him, and that was Janelle.
Yeah,
it's like
because
that.
Yeah, because we've
It had
seen
the opportunity to be good.
that pre-tribal was really interesting, and that got me excited.
Well, there were so many different ways it could have gone.
And there were a lot of different ways that it was planned, but then it just didn't. Because
what did we have? We had the prospect of the Girls Alliance,
yeah,
which was the only plan to vote Emmett. I thought it was a possibility, but no one followed that.
But nobody voted Emmett.
Then there was the general tribe majority thought to vote out Janelle because of the pure strength thing. And then there was literally just Emmett trying to be a dickhead for no reason and pull out a blindside for no reason. First Brawn tribal. There was no reason to do that other than just to sort of tickle his pickle, you know?
I think it was an interesting thing because of course what we saw the Girls Alliance went nowhere.
I thought it had I thought it was an opportunity, but
I just didn't understand why Emmett immediately went to Shannon against Shannon. Because some people said because Shannon was trying to get the girls versus boys thing going. But one, I don't know how Emmett would have found out about that.
Exactly.
And two, the only reason I can think of a way that Emmett would have found out about that is if Danny told him. But was Danny even involved in the original Girls Alliance?
I think so, because I think it was 6 or so girls. Who are the girls? Hold on, let's just count them.
Yeah.
We've got Danny, Kez, Flick, Chelsea. Who else? We had Janelle at that time as well.
Yeah.
Actually, I think it was only 5. Oh, and Shannon.
I'm just having a look at the episode now to see if I can find the bit where the Girls Alliance is sort of formed.
I think that was it. I think it's only 6 girls and it was 6 boys.
Yeah.
So, well, I guess the most they could have gotten there was a draw, but it was a possibility. Especially if they did if the girls did stick with the Girls Alliance and Simon, Emmett, Gavin did vote Shannon, then it would be 6-3-3, Emmett gone.
Yeah.
But that didn't happen. It was kind of annoying to see. We've already got our first sort of established goats on the Brawn tribe. Not Brawn tribe, Brawn tribe. At least my personal opinion. headlining that is Danny and Chelsea. They get nothing out of that alliance with the boys, and yet they still followed them.
Episode 3, we did see Danny sort of break into some independence. Sorry, Danny. No, sorry, hang on, I've got the names mixed up. Never mind.
Yeah,
sorry.
Danny, it's confusing.
Shit, sorry. Yeah,
Danny and Chelsea, they had really no reason to follow them. And they don't seem to want to do anything of their own either. They were initially with the whole Janelle thing. Maybe for a time they were with the Girls Alliance, and then they were with the boys.
Yeah.
They just seem to just follow whatever looks most appealing, I guess. So it's kind of disappointing to see them not have any sort of backbone to play. I did like the fact that Flick stood her ground, and I reckon she's going to develop into a very interesting player.
Hopefully she gets more screen time than the other Flick. Yeah, I think the divide between all of the players now in the Brawn tribe is really interesting. And of course we saw the emergence of what I would call is the core alliance of the Brawn tribe, which would be Simon, Gavin, and Emmett.
Yeah, along with their little...
those are,
attempted Chelsea Flick Danny, and in episode 3 we saw Flick switch with Danny.
Yeah.
But them still trying to get that majority 6 alliance. But they seem to be the biggest threat at the moment in that tribe.
Yeah. And then we got to the tribal, because honestly it looked like it was going against Emmett, that episode.
Especially with the questions thrown around, there was the big battle, between Janelle and Emmett, and it's like, surely something is happening here to make, all this arrogance from Emmett bite him in the ass.
Yeah. And then we saw nothing happen. It fizzled completely. And
what was it?
I think it was I think it was 6 to Janelle, 4 to Shannon.
4 to Shannon. No. It was
6 to Janelle, 5 to Shannon, 1 to
Emmett. No. It was 7 to Janelle.
Are you sure?
4 to Shannon. Yeah. Because here's how it's played out. So there was the 6 of Simon, Gavin, Emmett, Chelsea, Flick, Danny. Now, we know Flick changed and voted Janelle, and this is just a funny thing to me. Gavin was just a dumbass and thought they were still voting for Janelle and put Janelle's name down, which just leaves those 4 that voted for Shannon. That's just hilarious to me.
He did mention it was a bit blindsided at the end of... he did mention in the 3rd episode's tribal he was feeling a bit surprised, a bit blindsided. He wasn't expecting those results.
Even though they were literally random, we're voting Shannon.
He didn't seem to get the clue, and we saw Gavin be a bit clueless there, which I guess came back to bite him a little bit.
No, but it wasn't even that. We'll get into it when you talk about the 3rd episode trial, but I don't think it was his cluelessness that was the downfall of him. Because if it was the cluelessness that was the downfall of him, we would have seen Emmett and Simon turn on him, and they didn't. I don't think they ever knew that he screwed up.
Yeah.
Or he might have told them. Well, hey, here's my opinion on it. If he did tell them, it was like a lose-lose. The moment he did that, he was kind of screwed. Because if he did tell them that he did do it, they might turn on him, or he might be the first to go from that alliance just because he's kind of useless like that.
Yeah.
He had no idea. But then if he didn't tell them and they found out, then they'd think that he was working against them, and again, he'd become their target. So either way, he had the opportunity to become their target. But he never did, thankfully.
But now we've got the Emmett and Simon sort of bromance that's going on. And I think that tribal, when Janelle got kicked out, I think that's established sort of Emmett as sort of owning the Brawn tribe. I think that tribe is very much his at this point.
Well, at least Emmett and Simon, I'd say, because the editing in the 2nd episode very strongly framed it as Emmett as the ringleader, and then the 3rd episode strangely switched to a narrative where Simon was the ringleader. It was very confusing to see.
And I think, but before we get into the 3rd episode, I guess we saw Janelle head home that episode, of course.
Which was sad, because I really thought something was going to happen, and I thought the way she was fighting tooth and nail, and I thought she had found a way
She
to
was going.
dodge out of the
She was
crosshairs.
having a go.
She was having a go, and I was genuinely convinced that she had somehow found a way to sort of, dodge the crosshairs, on her head. And she didn't. It
Yeah.
just was edited in a way to make us believe, and then they just cucked us. It's just like, come on, man.
Yeah. It was such a disappointing tribal. It was so
Yeah, it really
exciting. It
was.
was it was going to happen. It was so
It had
exciting.
potential.
But it just nothing came of it. And it was so sad because I was so excited, and then at the end of that episode I just sort of went, what? And an interesting thing we saw as well is Shannon voted with Emmett and Simon to go against Janelle, which was in her worst interest, in my opinion.
Well, I don't know if it was with them. I don't know if they were the ones that manufactured the Janelle vote, or if it was general. Because from what I saw, it was just the general tribe consensus to vote Janelle because she was the weakest.
Yeah. But it was nice to have her. She was the most normal of all the Brawn.
Mm.
It was nice to have her around. I think she could have taken on sort of like maybe a Pia Miranda sort of role in the season. I think
She never really got the chance, yeah.
she never got the chance. I guess we're gonna say this a lot with all the early boots, but we can't really comment much on how good they were because we didn't get to see anything. I'm
I'm
we
just
saw, we
going to
saw
say, I reckon
Janelle
Janelle had.
fight. We saw Janelle fight, but
If she stuck
that's
around a little longer, I think she could have become a genuine threat, especially after a swap or a merge. But just in the whole Brains versus Brawn thing, she was kind of screwed over by that. If she was placed on the Brains tribe, she'd still be around. But the whole, Brains versus Brawn thing meant that Brawn wanted to sort of keep the whole, oh, we're big and strong narrative. And they just kicked the only person that didn't really fit that.
hold on to the strength exactly. But it was nice to see her, and I think she would have been a really cool player, but we just didn't get to see
Sure.
much of her. Except I did respect how she tried to, because I think she did. They did say in her intro that played in the first episode. It was the second episode. I don't remember. The whole week is sort of blurred as one a little bit for me. But
Yeah.
but she said she will be playing a social game, and we
She
saw
tried.
her try that. And to be fair, she would have if she almost did. She was close,
It was
but
the
nobody had
circumstances that screwed her over.
but nobody had like a spine to go against the objectively the most powerful people in that tribe now, and that's going to come back to bite
Oh, yeah.
everyone else, I think.
And again, we saw that. I guess it's ample time to move that into the third episode. I guess we saw that in the third episode.
Because we did see inadvertently a member of that core alliance fall.
Almost flip. Almost.
Yeah.
Look, what do we have? So nothing
Look.
much happened, I guess. Oh,
Nothing
we
at
had
the
fire
start.
at the
Brains
start.
got fire.
That's the other thing we forgot to mention
Yeah.
of Simon also cementing himself as a valuable asset to Brawn because he created fire on the second episode. I think it was day 3 or 4.
Yeah, while
Brains
Brain
got
didn't get
fire.
it until later. Yeah.
Brains got fire like day 5, 6, 7 maybe. I don't know. It was at the start of that episode where Andrew finally did something.
Yeah.
This motherfucker finally got the fire
Survival
going.
expert. Yeah.
And we had the whole George again being a dick.
He's just
Just being like,
He's an interesting and exciting player to have, and also if you go to 10 play now, he is the front page of 10 play.
He's the most marketable for sure.
Yeah, but his photo just is so ill.
It's infuriating. That's the whole point about it.
His photo is just so ill. But look, I don't think anything at the start of the episode, I don't think there's much to talk about there, because the start of the episode is always a bit of fluff. But
it's just camp life, yeah.
What we did see, we saw the intro. They didn't have an intro.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought they had gone down the US route. The US recently dropped their intro. I don't know if it was Winners at War or the season before that they dropped the intro. And the actually very sad. I love the intro. I love this song. I love
the intro is so good.
Stuff. But I reckon they did it for good reason. And that's because if you have a look at the intro, all the B-roll cuts of each castaway seems to be from those first 2, maybe 3 episodes.
Yeah.
So they didn't really spoil anything. So they could have been avoiding that for spoiler warnings. Because I think there was a sort of spoiler where we knew David would stick around for a bit. because we kept seeing him in the intro, in All Stars in a challenge that we didn't see until sort of like a week or so in, or a little more than that. I think it was a couple of weeks in that we didn't see that challenge. So every time we didn't see that, we were like, oh, David's, he's still going to survive this episode, right? So I think they partially did to avoid spoilers.
Yeah.
But I'm happy to see it, that it's still there and that they haven't gone down the American path.
Yeah, I think it gets you into the mood. It gets you into like the Survivor mood, and it's so fun because I wonder, because my theory was either Channel 10 told them we don't need it this year, and then they saw Twitter and they were like, oh crap, sure, let's get it back, and then they went back and edited the episodes. Yeah. Either
they threw it together last minute, or it was
they were avoiding
only
spoilers.
Using footage from those first 3 episodes.
Yeah. But we saw the return of the intro, which is very welcome, because the Survivor Twitter account did put out, calm down, intro's coming back. And Jonathan said that as well on his. But it was nice to see that back. And then I guess the first reward challenge, holy shit.
Doo-doo.
That was terrible.
Doo-doo.
That was so bad. It was all physical, no mental.
It couldn't be less balanced. Again, I said this before. It was pure strength. There was nothing other than pure strength.
The only mental aspect of this challenge that I could possibly think of is endurance for holding that trough up. But of course, thinking to yourself, I can do it is not going to make that trough any lighter. And that thing looked like it was getting really bloody heavy. So that was a terrible challenge.
Ain't no brain cell holding that up. Like, come on.
Yeah. And we had Baden and Rachel holding it up. So all Brawn was holding it up anyway.
It was actually interesting that Baden was it was actually Baden that collapsed, not Rachel.
Yeah. Rachel's good. We haven't seen much of her yet.
No, other than the whole George calling her one of the weakest, which evidently isn't true if she was still holding the trough up even when Baden was struggling.
Exactly. Yeah. It was just, I thought that challenge was terrible, but I guess it didn't really matter because we did have the reward, which was the tea. Nice little motivation booster, and they had photos.
And then they had the family photos, and that's the biggest. That was
too early.
I'll let you go.
I thought it was too early.
It's what makes me feel like they're soft. Like, it was day 6, maybe day 7 at Reward Challenge. I think it was actually day 7. Day 7, and they were already getting family photos? Okay, yeah, fine, that's okay. But if they're already getting emotional over it, like, bro, how homesick do you get? It's been a week. And, my brother did bring up a good point to me. Oh, maybe they, had already been quarantining for like 2 weeks prior to the season for them to actually be able to start.
That's a good point, actually.
But even still, they had contact with their family that entire time. They had photos, they had phone calls, they had video calls. Yeah. It's not like they were completely isolated like they are now.
Yeah. I just thought it was too early. I thought it was a nice way for the tribe to bond. It was a nice way to get some backstory into these characters.
But it just felt soft.
Yeah.
Yeah. Usually it's done much later, like at least past merge. And, both you and I, we've been on, 3-week camps. Not quite the same.
Not the same, because we're not...
Not the same conditions. Yeah. Like, we have tents and good food and, like, fire and stuff.
Yeah.
But, like, it's still 3 weeks, not at home, like, hiking every single day.
It's
zero contact with anyone other than the people you're with at all. And it's like not that hard. Like, I would not be tearing up after a week being away.
Yeah. But...
And even still, if they had that 2-week quarantine, I wouldn't be tearing up. I wasn't even tearing up at the end of that, like when I came home. It's like... Yeah.
It just felt so very, very early for it. Because I think when they did it last year, they didn't do it for like a couple weeks. And then they were saying, like, oh, it reminded us why we're here. Bitch, you've been here for, like, 6 days. Come on. But,
it's like, one person from your tribe has been voted out at this point. One person from the other tribe. You've barely been here. Why are you being like, oh, yeah, like, oh, it's so good to see them here. Like, dude, stop.
Come on.
One interesting thing, though. Sorry, I keep butting in.
No.
Interesting thing is, I don't know if production chooses the photos or if the castaways choose the photos. But
I think it's the family. I think it's the families, surely.
Then it's the funniest thing because there's one with Emmett and his like wife or fiance or whatever, and
Mm.
it's the most dicky photo you've ever seen because it's them kind of like almost kissing, and it's like black and white, and it's really produced, and it's just like, of course that's Emmett's photos. Like out of anyone that could have had a photo of
It was
like that,
Emmett.
of course it was Emmett. Like it's
Yeah.
just,
I think it was a really nice moment, and Emmett's one didn't really get any screen time. Emmett
no, it
didn't
was just
get
sort of
to.
in the background, but I caught a
Yeah,
flash of it, and I'm
but
like,
it
that's the
was.
funniest shit I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think my favorite moment from that one was probably Gerald with his sister. I thought that was a really
Mm,
nice moment. That was really
yeah,
cute. But still, it was way too. Well, okay, look, it obviously wasn't if they were getting a bit emotional about it. But I guess
like
from a viewer perspective, it just felt a little long. Like maybe in one of the talking heads, they could have said, "Oh, you know, after having to quarantine in Queensland," but they haven't really mentioned COVID at all,
I
and I
haven't
guess they want
mentioned
to
that.
keep it out of that.
And
Um,
here's like the three things. It's like episode 3 they did it. Only 2 people have been voted out at this point. One person from the Brawn tribe, and they still did it.
yeah,
And there's still like 48 days in total, and they're only a week in, and they're already bringing a fanfare. It's just early in every sense of the word.
it just seems so. It just felt too early for that sort of thing, and I feel like they're
Sure.
losing. It feels like so far the only rewards have been food, which I think, like, can you
Well, there was
not
the
think of
survival kit at
something?
the start.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, well, it was the survival kit, but it had a lot of food in it.
Yeah, true. I had like fruit. Yeah, good
Yeah,
shout.
I, it just, still, it feels like it's too early for the food as well. It feels like they've got the order of the rewards all, well, I don't know what they've got lined up later on, but it just feels like they've got the reward system all
Yeah,
wrong.
but usually you start out with like essential equipment,
Yeah,
like your stuff and they just seem to be throwing food in with it because again in this I think second reward challenge they got like sort of fishing nets, they sort of got fishing essentials along with food, right?
yeah,
It's just like you sort of keep it just as those sort of survival essentials, your fishing stuff, I don't know, maybe some foraging stuff,
yeah.
flint, that'd be a huge one. But yeah, it's just like all food and family and stuff. It's just like, man, I don't need the sub stories this early. Like, let me actually see something
Yeah.
interesting. Let me actually, that's the other thing. Let me actually care about these people first before you start showing me them crying. Because we've
Yeah.
still barely seen every single one of them at this point.
Mm. Like I think yeah, a lot of them just haven't gotten screen time. Like I think Chelsea has gotten like a tiny little bit. There's one on the Brain tribe that I know that I can't think of the name of right now that hasn't had any. Same on the Brawn. I know
Yeah,
there's a couple there that I can't. And I guess at that point, one of them was Kez, and we'll talk about her in a little bit
but
because
like
she
at
had
least
an
Braun,
interesting
Benny,
episode.
I've only seen Benny speak once.
Yeah, Benny
And
hasn't spoken at all. The entrepreneur, he hasn't spoken once. And well, one, he's spoken once, but he hasn't
he,
spoken a lot. Who else
he
on the
looks Sigma, but like he hasn't said anything Sigma.
Danny, Big D, he hasn't really said anything on the Brawn either. He got his
Until like
moment
he
later
got his
on though.
spotlight, he got his moment.
He got his moment.
We'll just move into the immunity challenge. I guess we'll
The
just get to that,
the most balanced so far.
so we can talk about that later.
Oh
Yeah,
wait,
I
no,
reckon that was the most
hang on,
balanced so
wait.
far.
Sorry. The reward, we obviously saw Kez secure a clue.
Oh, was that then, or
Yeah,
was that
that was in the
after?
reward.
Oh, that was,
Sorry, I almost forgot about that. That
wasn't
was
in
a
the reward. It
reward.
was after the reward. It was between reward and immunity. She got the
Okay,
clue
yeah.
then, but I think she got the idol after they'd lost immunity.
She got the idol afterwards, but before
But
we
she got the
go into
clue.
the immunity, we have the clue.
Again, it was
Again,
hiding in plain sight.
it was pretty obvious, honestly. It was worse than the first one.
It's
But
just hanging
again,
there.
in my opinion, too early. Episode 3, it's better. I would have expected to see idols getting whipped out next week. Like later
Look,
next week.
I wouldn't have a problem with it if it didn't get played as well. If you just held it, it would have been nice. It would have been cool, at least to establish that here, so that in future episodes, we can always keep in the back of the mind that Kez has an idol
But of
that she
course
can pull out.
we saw how
But
she
we saw
played
it.
it.
We saw it used.
Don't
We'll
blame
get
her.
onto.
I don't blame her for that. But I guess we'll talk about the immunity challenge real quick first, because that's when we'll, yeah.
Look, I don't
Um,
know your opinion on it. You said it was the same as the others.
I
In
I
my
thought it was
opinion,
okay. I thought it was the most balanced, but also I
in
thought
my
it was
opinion, I think it
very
was the best so
samey.
far. Look, the puzzle at the start was good to see. Again, we saw George actually not be a terrible person for once. Like the way he went about it was still bad. The way he
Okay,
was like, "I
look,
see the
he was a
answer,"
whiny little shit for like a minute or two, and then
but
eventually
you
he got
have to
into it.
admit,
He did something.
he was probably the biggest reason why they blew that out of the
Oh,
water so hard
absolutely.
because Brawn was still struggling with that puzzle for so long, and George cracked it for them
No, I
literally right out of the gate.
I fully agree that George was a massive, if not the reason that Brain got so far ahead. But
Mm,
also, it just again spoke a bit to his personality, and like how he acts, where he saw the solution, but he didn't really yell out. He was just sort of like, "I see it, I see it, I see it, I see it," like, and then
yeah,
eventually he got in there, he did get in there, which was great. I
he
think
did
he
it.
really did
Well,
that, but that's something he needs to improve: is tribe communication.
yeah, he could have said to them, "You've got to move it through the middle," instead of just complaining to the person next to him, telling them how to solve it instead of the
Yeah,
people actually solving it how
I
to
was
solve it.
yelling at the TV. I was like,
But
George, just go, just yell out to me like, do this, or get one of them to come back. And eventually he
yeah,
did.
exactly
He did eventually. Like, so credit to him for doing it,
for
and
doing
he
it. Yeah,
helped them get ahead. But God, yeah, I don't know. That was just again just another little sticking point for me. If he hadn't
well,
been set up as a villain in the past two episodes, I wouldn't have noticed that. But now every little
yeah,
thing he's doing for me
it just
is sort of
irritates.
just stacking up a little bit.
Well, here's the other thing as well that I wanted to. I forgot to mention earlier,
Yeah.
but his whole reason for wanting Mitch gone in the first episode was, oh, he's trying to be the ringleader. Anyone who's watched the show before knows that the ringleaders at the start never, never get far, and then
But
immediately goes on
George,
to say, "I want to take control of the tribe." It's just so contradictory,
yeah,
and this just shows his personality. He hates anyone that has influence that isn't him, which
yeah,
I guess is a valuable quality as someone that works in
in
politics, but
yeah,
in Survivor,
no,
man, that's not getting
come
you
on.
anywhere.
It's just yeah, he hasn't been the best this week. Will he be the best next week? Definitely not. I think Channel 10, even if they have to edit it to shit, Channel 10 are writing out his villain arc completely. They are going all
I
in on
know.
that.
They're going
Because
all in on it. It would be a shame if he does go early like Russell when he was in there for a tiny bit.
Russell was hilarious. Oh my god. US could never do it, but Australia did it. Second.
I
Nowhere
know.
near Final Tribal Council.
I don't know why he ever stuck that on, in US. Anyway, I was gonna say, but yeah, the whole George villain arc is sort of written out. But in terms of the rest of the challenge, I don't think it was that bad or like too biased towards bronze anyway. Because yeah, sort of climbing the wall requires a little bit of strength, but then that sort of not quite rope bridge. I don't know what you call it. That's sort of a lot of balance
Yeah.
more than anything.
I think that
And
was fun.
at
That was
least
barely Brawn. Everyone, even Way made it through perfectly fine. So
yeah,
everyone
and I
was
feel
fine
like
there.
and I feel like the seesaw at the end was meant to be sort of the great equalizer, but we only saw Brains, stack, spill their tower once.
Yeah.
And Braun never even got a chance, I don't think. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I think the seesaw as well would have been good for a great leveler had there been sort of the pressure of the other tribes sort of getting close as well. But because they never got close, I think it sort of made it easy because they could take their
Oh,
time.
I think Brawn got kind of. Brawn was
No,
kind of
like
close. I think they just got to the seesaw when Brain won.
by close, I mean sort of both tribes on the
Oh,
seesaw and
okay.
say they've
Yeah.
both got like four stacked hard. I think the pressure's on. You're thinking, shit, I've got to go fast. I've got to get these stacked up before them. But
Yeah.
because there wasn't that much time pressure on Brain, they could take it a little slower and a little more carefully and just secure it, which is why they only spilled once. I think if both tribes on at the same time, we would have seen a heap of spills because they both would have been trying to go as fast as they could and
There would have
obviously
been a lot
mess
of
up.
tension. Yeah. There would have been
But,
a lot more tension. But of course, it wasn't needed because Brain smashed that challenge. Again, thanks to George, I guess. As much as I hate to say it, good work, George.
Good work, George. Well, who knows? Braun might have been a little more evenly matched had they not gotten rid of Janelle, but they never know that because they just immediately wrote off the weakest person.
I don't know.
With
Janelle
good
doesn't
reason.
strike me as someone who would be able to hit that puzzle immediately like George did. Well, not immediately,
It's
but like, yeah.
It's what she touted herself as being strong at, but look, we don't really know if she would have or not.
We never got to see.
You know, we never got to see it. Like, it was fair enough them voting her out because to that point the challenges had been very physical. I think this is the first one where it wasn't really a lot of strength required,
Yeah.
which is why I liked it the most. But yeah, look, that's their fault for being so bad at that initial puzzle.
Yeah.
But afterwards, a lot of interesting scenes at the Brawn camp.
The Brawn. Okay, so of course we saw Kez get her idol, right?
And the way she did that was genius, if I do have to say so.
That was okay. So she's Flick. I guess if she never played the idol, Flick knowing would have been important. But she played it immediately.
But the way she used Flick as a cover to get it, it's kind of weird when someone's off sort of digging on their own. Yeah. The fact that she had sighted where it was, and I was like, Flick, come over. Yeah. That was pretty good.
I think
getting it back to her bag, okay, that was a little shakier.
That was hilarious. She first had it at the back of her shorts. Didn't look great. And she eventually fumbled it through. And I was expecting another, I don't know who it was. I think it might have been Monica from season 4. I don't remember. Where they put the idol at the back of the pants, but it slid out in front of everyone, and everyone knew she had an idol. I don't know if it was Monica. It might have been someone else. But yeah, I don't know. Was it? Maybe it was Janine. No, I don't think it was Janine. I don't know, but someone in season 4 did that. It slid out the back of their pants, and everyone sort of saw it. Was like, ooh. So I was expecting another one of those situations, and Kez looked so suspicious as well. And also, I think Danny, Big D knew. I think
maybe we don't know. If he knew, why would he try to swing the vote towards Kez anyway? Not that he voted that way in the end, but still. Well, I think in reality she wasn't as suspicious as the editing made her out to be.
Probably, yeah.
Because I think people are generally doing weird shit around camp. Like, you're there like for an entire day. Of course someone's going to be doing weird shit, right?
Yeah.
And, Flick with the clutch save of bringing her shoes over to swim. And then she could sort of stuff it in the shoes. That was a pretty clutch save.
I think we're going to see Flick and Kez become very close allies in the game.
Yeah, at least it was a statement, even if she didn't hold on to it, and Flick still doesn't have that knowledge. It was a statement to Flick that she did trust her to let her know in the first place, I think.
Yeah, I think they're going to become very close this game. And also, I think Flick is looking like a really strong player right now as well.
Oh, for sure.
And I guess if we talk about further predictions at the end, I do want to talk about Flick a little bit, because I think she's in a really good position right now. But how we approached Tuesday night's tribal was very interesting, because of course we had
again multiple angles.
Yeah, well, we only had 2 main ones this time, which
they sort of switched. So there was initially the play against Gavin from the other core alliance that got Janelle out. Yeah. That was that thing, and was 6-5, right? They initially wanted Shannon again for no real reason. Well, and then they try to recruit Danny, who then again for no reason wants to switch it to Kez.
Yeah.
So then they go Kez. But it was always sort of going to be on a knife edge, especially when you've got 6-5 alliances. There's always someone that could flip, which is what we had the danger with Danny.
Yeah. Because the reason I think Danny was sus of Kez was because look, the way it was edited, it made it look like Danny spotted her. Like, it just made it look like that. And then Danny, of course, went to them and was like, I'm more comfortable with voting off Kez tonight. Because I think he was hoping to flush an idol. and I think he was hoping that um, Kez wouldn't play it that night. But of course, he still voted Gavin then.
It's a lot of, but that's actually very interesting because your theory that he was trying to flush an idol could have. It makes a lot of sense now that we think about it, right?
Yeah,
Because
I think Big D was trying to flush an idol.
If he did spot her, then he wouldn't want her to keep it, right? And here's the thing. Going into that tribal council, Kez had every single reason to think that they were going to go for Shannon again. She had no reason to think that she was
on the chopping block.
The target, right?
I thought it was interesting that Shannon's name never came up that night as well. Like, she never really came up. It was just gone. I thouut Emmett would be gunning for it.
It was just at the start, and then Danny was like, and then they're like, okay, Danny.
Yeah.
But the thing is, she wouldn't play it for herself. There's no reason you play it for yourself the day you get it, unless you've caught whiff that your name is going down.
Yeah.
And if Danny was trying to flush an idol, he could have told her, right?
Yeah.
And if he told her, and we did see the idol getting flushed in the end.
We did get flushed anyway.
Because if we skip to the results, it was 6 on Gavin and 5 on Kez. So even if she didn't play it, she was safe. But the interesting thing is that Cassos don't know that. And that was, by the way, Jonathan read the votes. He only read 9 votes. And there were 2 left unread, right?
But they were both Gavin anyway, as we could see.
They were both Gavin, but even if I think if one of them was Kez, or if both were Kez. No, if one of them was Kez, then her playing the idol wouldn't have been sort of, a flush, right? But she doesn't know whether or not she burnt it or not. And that's why I think it's very interesting by the way that they did the vote reading, because none of them know for certainty whether or not that idol was burnt. Because for all they know, it was 6 on Kez, 5 on Gavin, and she played it to save herself. But, without reading those final 2 notes, final 2 votes.
Yeah, because regardless of what they were, Gavin was going home.
Regardless, Gavin was going home. But the only difference it makes is whether or not the idol was burnt or not, which in the end we know it was, which is disappointing to see because I reckon if it stayed in the game a little longer, it could have been a little more interesting. But I guess it's just, they're spicing tribals up more.
I think Big D made an amazing... I'm going to keep calling him Big D because I can't, because I think I'm going to get Danny and Danny mixed up. And Big
D just call him Big D then, yeah.
He calls himself Big D as well. He calls himself Big D. It's all good. So, and I think the play that Big D pulled off on Tuesday night was incredible. I think it was so smooth. It was so flawless. He was a swing vote. He was in the most powerful position of the game that night. Second, he flushed an idol. He flushed Kez's idol. Third, he got rid of Gavin, who I'm having a feeling he was seeing as a bit of a threat. And fourth, never blew his cover.
That's true. They don't know, and that's the other thing. They will never know, at least Simon and Emmett now, they will never know whether or not Danny actually voted for them.
Exactly.
That's the other interesting thing. They don't know if Danny flipped, and Kez doesn't know if she burnt her idol. And that's what I really like about the way they read the votes, because they will never know.
I don't know if Danny did it like that intentionally, like if that's what he was always planning, but regardless, it was an incredible play. And he was easily the best player that episode.
If it was what he was planning, goddamn, that is one of the greatest moves I've ever seen. Even though on the surface it doesn't seem that great. If that is what he was planning all along,
haphazard, I think.
But if that was what he planned, I don't think so. But if it was what he planned, kudos to him, because that's pretty cool. If that was what he was planning.
But of course, we saw Gavin go home that night, and I think we both sort of called it. We did call Gavin going home.
Not only with the evidence of him posting on Instagram when they were supposed to be filming the first week.
Yeah.
But also just generally, I thought that, he's a footy player. Although he did seem to be more invested in playing the actual game than I thought. Like, he was genuinely,
He was doing quite well for himself. I didn't mind
him as much as I would have.
Yeah.
And it seemed like he was genuinely beat down by the fact that he had to go already.
Yeah.
I think I didn't give him enough credit in our initial thoughts, and that he actually did want to did want to give it a good crack. And, it's
I was
sad that he
happy
didn't really
with
get to.
I was
But
happy
we
with them. Yeah.
we see the trio broken up.
We've seen the boys' club as they've been referred to, and I think that's good because I think that tribe was in trouble if those three were still together.
However,
Mhm.
however, they're still a big threat, and that's purely because they voted out of any three of them. They went for Gavin, right? Which I don't know if I was in the same situation, I would go with as well.
I
Because
wouldn't
here's
have
the
gone
thing:
with Gavin. Gavin was not the ringleader.
Gavin
Yeah.
isn't the biggest strategic threat out of the other two. Personally, I'd go Emmett first,
Yeah.
and then Simon, and then Gavin. But Emmett and Simon very
Absolutely.
close. Gavin would be my third pick by far. But I think what influenced them was the fact that Emmett and Simon have been much more useful in challenges than Gavin was, simply by their younger age. Yes, Gavin is fairly strong and muscular and built up, but he's also 40, was he 48?
Yeah.
Something like that.
He's 48.
And it's also interesting that the two over 40s in Brawn are already gone.
They are good. Brawn's well, now their mean age or median age is completely down. No, it's gone now.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's amazing. And yeah, because they have no over 40s now, while Brains is still full of them.
Yeah. Like the only person they voted out Phil, how old's Phil? Like 23 or something.
I think they were 28.
Oh, okay. Maybe
I'll
a little old.
check. Actually, no, maybe they weren't.
I'm pretty sure they were 23.
I'll give it a check. But we've seen so much. We've seen the elimination of the above 40s off Brawn, and I think that's gonna both benefit Brawn in the long run. Even though I think the loss of Gavin is gonna hurt a little more than the loss of Janelle.
Of course it will, but again, at least strength-wise, I back their call that it's not going to hurt them strength-wise as much as it would have to lose Emmett or Simon.
Yeah,
but strategic-wise, Emmett and Simon could still take control from here. I reckon. I don't think they're down and out.
No,
the only way to truly kill them is to get rid of one of them.
I think they can. Yeah, Phil was 28, by the way.
28.
But I think Emmett and Simon, I sort of agree where I think we can see them come back and build up a lot more. I think if they kept Gavin around, it would have been a lot better because look, he's not as physical as the younger guys, but still he's a pretty good physical asset.
Mm-hmm.
And second, he is probably, I don't know if it would have changed once Emmett or Simon were out of the picture, but he was not that big of a strategic threat.
Oh, especially with his blunder in his first tribal council, I don't think it was a big strategic threat at all.
If it was a little closer to merge, I would have called it a good move. But I think at this point it just wasn't necessary, and I think Emmett or Simon were safer bets to get rid of.
Yeah, but it's just interesting in that aspect.
Yeah,
whether or not.
But we've seen the AFL legend head off as both of us predicted.
As we predicted. So, yeah. I guess we'll just, that sort of recaps, our thoughts on the 3 episodes.
What do we think of the week overall? What are we thinking? I think it was a good introduction to
I think it was a good start. I think they sort of avoided a lot of our worries that we did have.
I think the challenges they haven't exactly fixed. I know Chris in our YouTube comments said this as well after the first episode went to air. Chris in our YouTube comments said that that our concerns were sort of starting to pop up again. I think they're simmering a little bit in terms of the challenges and the balance. It's getting better as it goes on.
It's getting better. We've only seen a very small fraction. Every single reward challenge has been poor.
I'm very wary
getting
still.
Better.
Yeah. But I think I'm going to watch it pretty keenly next week. Because it still isn't there in my opinion. It's better, but it just still isn't there.
They need to even the playing field a little more with the reward challenges. Of course, if you could choose which of the 2 challenges to be more balanced, you'd obviously pick immunity because in the long run that has a big impact. But it'd be nice to see brains win a reward. Because I think, again, same thing happened Champions Contenders, where the contenders did win a few immunity challenges, but I don't think they won well, they probably won one, but they barely won any reward challenges all the way to emerge.
Yeah. I think, so next week I'm going to watch the challenges quite keen, especially those reward challenges, like you said, because those are shitters in terms of balance.
Terrible. In terms of the celebrities, they haven't been bad as we thought they would be.
It's been alright.
It's been underplayed.
They haven't gone like, oh my god, AFL legend Gavin, like it was mentioned here and there, but it was never really brought up too heavily.
Okay, well, here's the thing. It seems like they're still sort of doing that stuff in the promos.
Oh, absolutely.
But I'm not watching a lot of the promos. I'm here to watch the show, and at least in the show itself, it seems totally fine.
The way the show has handled it is good. I'm fine with how they've handled the celebrity status of some of their people. Andrew hasn't been mentioned at all as a celebrity, and I respect that. I really like. He hasn't promoted his tour at all. Could that change next week? Maybe. But I don't think it will. I think they've been very cautious about how they've casted celebrities, and I think they've done it in a way where it's marketable, but it doesn't impact the show itself.
Yeah,
and I think that's good. I'd still prefer more celebrities.
I'm fine with the trade-off that the promos and all the promotional material can seem a little bit obnoxious if the show itself is unaffected.
Yeah.
Because again, as I said, I'm not here to watch ad breaks on different shows where they're hyping up Survivor. I'm here to just watch the show, right?
Exactly.
And as long as the final product is unaffected, I'm okay with that. It is still a little flashy, like we thought it would be. They seem to have these really strange graphics at the start of each day, like day 3 or whatever, and like some B-roll.
Yeah, because in this season, the day counter, full screen, as opposed to like in previous seasons where it was just in the corner a little bit. But I will say, the shots they're getting of Cloncurry are beautiful.
Oh, they're nice.
They just look amazing. So good on them for that. They've really shown off the landscape really well.
It just feels a little too dramatic. Like, we don't need these massive B-roll shots with dramatic, like, day 6, babies, day 6, motherfucker. Like, we don't need it.
Just chuck it in the corner again, like you did last year, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before. It's not hard. It's like, it was fine. Like, what? It doesn't add suspense for me. I'm not sure about anyone else.
Well, I think at least as we get a little further on into the show, it will emphasize the length a little bit more, because Australian Survivor is a fair chunk longer than American. I know in the past Australian
this season. We're 48
in the past Australian has been, I think, 51.
Season 1 and 2 and maybe 3, I believe, were 55, and then 4 and 5 were 50, and this is 48.
Yeah, this is 48. American's whole shtick is 39 days. So I think it helps emphasize the length over American a little more.
Yeah.
At least just emphasizing that length in general a little more.
I would have liked to see another 55-day season this year. But
I
obviously I understand logistically that wasn't going to work this year.
And I think the reason why it's actually a little shorter is they might be doing, final 3 tribal instead of final 2. It's a possibility.
It's never been... we haven't done it yet in Australia.
We haven't done it yet, which is why I think this season could be the season due to the shorter. Well, think about it this way. It's just, if we've had these sort of 55, 50, and final 2 tribal councils, if you're eliminating one less person, 48 seems about the perfect number.
And I guess it is... Yeah, hang on, because 24 castaways, 48 days, that's a castaway every 2 days.
But the last couple days are, of course, that little final stretch. Yeah. So I reckon we could be in for a final 3 because of it.
I don't think we'll see a final 3. I'd really like to see one, because final 3s are very exciting, but I don't think we'll see it. But I think that's I'm
going to make the call final 3.
You're calling final 3? Alright.
I'm calling final 3.
Evan has called final 3. I don't think we'll see a final 3, but I really would. And I guess we'll see who's right at the end of the season. But
Nice little wager going.
and I guess speaking of final season predictions, sorry, not final, I think players that I'm interested in watching, these are the people who I think at the moment have a pretty decent game and have a good shot. Flick, like I mentioned before, she's very powerful. She's lined up a lot of friendships, I guess, and
Yeah.
nobody is suspecting her. I think she's a very strong player
She
right now.
doesn't seem like a threat, I guess, in the grand scheme of things, and at least to the other players.
Yeah.
But she seems to have a lot of potential, and she seems very grounded as well, which is a
Yeah.
massive asset.
I'm really liking her right now. I think she's got a really good shot.
Oh yeah.
Of course, she hasn't gotten too much screen time. I think the most she's gotten was episode 3. But so I'm really liking the look of her right now. So at the moment,
sure.
she's my main one to watch. And the other one, I guess I wanted to watch a little bit was Big D, because I think if that wasn't a coincidence, I think that's a lot more unstable than I think my Flick call is. I'm not saying these are the ones that'll win. These are just the ones that I'm feeling really good at right now. I think Big D, I think he's got a good idea of what he's doing, but of course I think that could change next week depending on how he performs in tribals. Because I think the last 2 tribals, he's done pretty well for himself. He's lined himself up solidly, and he did give himself away in the most recent tribal. So I'm interested in looking at him next week.
Yeah, and if that thing, that sort of play that we think he did wasn't a coincidence, that if he has more of that in his arsenal, that could be very exciting.
Absolutely.
Looking at Brains people, because I know you've talked a lot about Brawn, even though we've only seen one Brains tribal, at the moment Mitch has himself in a good position, but I think he could come undone either in a couple more tribals at the Brains tribe, or I feel like he could butt heads if swapped into a majority Brawn sort of tribe. Or not even majority, just a couple Brawn. I feel like he could butt heads.
But
I feel like most of the Brains haven't gotten a lot of screen time so far, because we've only seen them at one tribal council, and that was mainly the George, Way, and Mitch show.
As well. Yeah, it was a very basic tribal council. I think it was the least exciting one of the week.
So I don't think we haven't seen a lot of strong players from Brains. I would like to see George stick around, not because I like him, just because I think he's funny to have. And if he does make it far, that'll be an absolute pisser. Like, that'll be hilarious.
Except I think he's most likely to be gone next week, if not the week after. There's no way he's staying on that Brains. The only thing that will save him is a swap.
Yeah, he could actually, sort of. I feel like he'll never actually be in control, because I feel like if he does get in amongst some Brawn, I feel like if he does get in amongst some Bronze people, he will keep that ego, but I feel like they'll sort of view him as a sort of like the little pet. Like, oh, look at him. Like, it's like a chihuahua, like yappy.
Yeah.
Like, really aggressive at times, but it's like, oh, you're cute. Like, you can't actually do anything, right?
Yeah.
I think we saw a little bit of that sort of in just the camp life with George. The fact that he didn't like eating, like, the rice and lentils, I think.
That was
like,
so funny. Oh my god.
The way he was just kind of making a fool of himself when everyone was getting fish. Just like, he just sort of seems to...
Yay!
Like, while he is kind of annoying, I think he almost has the same sort of role at the Brains tribe of being that little yappy chihuahua.
He'd be the same at Brawn as well, I think. Yeah. I think he's gone next week or the week after. I don't see him staying that long. And I guess and I think Mitch is because I think something we haven't seen from the Brains tribe is a clear leader, like someone who's ruling the Brains tribe.
So Mitch seems influential.
Mitch is the closest, but will we see him lean more into that next week? And I don't think we will, because he doesn't want to seem like a threat, and George is already throwing his name out there. And regardless of how annoying everyone finds George, I think Mitch will come undone, but George is definitely not going to be the one to do it.
Well, I'm definitely hoping that he will lean into sort of more of like a leadership role, because he definitely does seem to sort of have a lot of influence at this point, and he seems to have a good relationship with a lot of people in the tribe. I don't know if he's willing to actually either make any like ruthless or cutthroat or insane plays using that influence. I think he'll sort of be very passive about it. But I'm really hoping he sort of leans into it a little bit more, starts cooking up some things that are a little more interesting. Because of course, the only thing we've seen from him so far is Bootway,
Yeah, which hasn't even happened.
which hasn't happened.
But of course, that only happened because George had that advantage.
George had that
Um,
advantage.
but I think Mitch is in a really good position, like you said before.
Oh
I
yeah,
think he's a decent lock for merge. I
I'd say he could hang around a little bit if he doesn't rub any Brawns the wrong way with an inevitable swap.
okay,
I don't
yeah.
know when that's going to happen, but I think it could happen eventually.
I think he'd settle very well into the bronze though, because obviously he is quite physically able. I think he'd settle quite well
He
into the
is,
bronze. But
but I think he just has a certain personality that has the potential to rub them the wrong way.
yeah, and of
I
course
can't
if there
really
was a
explain it more
swap,
than that.
if there was a swap and they got rid of all the brains, Mitch is the first one to go out of like the brawny people if there was a swap.
Of course.
But I think he's a decent lock for merge, and I don't know. I wouldn't put money on that, but at the moment he's looking pretty good for merge. I know it's very hard to make these calls right now because again, there's still what is it,
It's been 1 week.
21 people in the game. But he's looking
Yeah.
really good at the moment. Out of all the brains, I think he's the one to watch, but I still don't think he matches my sort of watchable factor of Big D and Flick.
Well, yeah, no doubt he's the one to watch. But the other thing I will say about that is we still haven't really seen a lot of the Brains tribes. There probably are some more people to watch in there that just haven't gotten any screen time yet, mainly because they've only been in one tribal, and the one tribal they were in was incredibly basic and boring.
Yeah, I guess we just haven't seen much of the brains this week because, of course, once that immunity challenge happens, the tribe going to tribal is the one that gets the screen time for the rest of the episode.
Of course, yeah. You get like a little bit of a celebration, like woohoo, like we did it, like
Yeah,
a
but
bit of a circle
still,
jerk, but like
it's almost all the tribe that's going to tribal, and I think we haven't
yeah.
gotten the opportunity to see much of the brains, and I'd like to see more of them. But I think at the moment the Brawn players are the most interesting to watch right now. But of course that'll
Oh
probably
yeah.
change, and I guess George, mainly because he is so loud and so noticeable.
It'll
He
just
is the
be
yappy
interesting to see where he
chihuahua,
goes.
like you said.
Yeah.
Were there any players you were thinking of watching next week, specifically?
Other than anyone I've already mentioned, I think, oh, maybe going back to Braun, maybe Kez. I'm interested to see where she goes from the idol play. If
Yeah,
she sort of picks up some more steam or continues at the momentum she is going, I reckon she could be a potential threat. But if she sort of backs down after the whole experience, then that'd be a little unfortunate.
I think
But
she's
I definitely see a fairly strong alliance between her and Flick emerging that could be very interesting to watch.
yeah. I think everyone in the Brawn tribe is set up really well. There's just the brains that I think we need some more time to get a grasp of. But and also something I'm worried a little bit about next week. Advantages. How many more are they going to throw in? Because I think we've had
Yeah,
there's a point where they lose their impact, and I think it's already very quickly approaching that.
the fact that they've already used two is a sign.
Yeah.
But look, the fact that one of the most interesting tribals so far was one where there weren't any advantages. With that whole Janelle thing, I'm hoping we see more of that so that we don't have any more advantages thrown in there. And
Yeah.
no doubt there will be more of that. Um, I don't think it's too big of a concern because they haven't really run too wild with it in the past, except that one Shan idol plant that just
That
really,
was so
infuriated me.
we're gonna see it again. We're gonna see it again.
It just
But
depends how bad it is.
well, I don't think we're gonna see that level of. Oh, and I guess another thing that of producer meddling that I noticed. One of Janelle's talking heads in episode 2, you could tell that was stitched together. It was so obvious.
Oh, they're all stitched together. I don't
Yeah.
think that's a secret.
But Janelle, like, it just feels like with a lot of the producer meddling, the narrative crafting, it feels like they're just not trying as hard to hide it.
I think it's just a changing climate, just in general, that means they don't really have to hide it as much. Although, look, it doesn't seem too bad. I
Yeah.
will say, at least the game itself seems fairly natural. Apart from, I don't think the idol was too bad.
The
Because there's
idol was
nothing that was
okay,
guaranteeing. There's
but
nothing guaranteeing that she could have picked it up very covertly, which she ended up doing. The advantage was only very obviously planted, and of course, when it's one of those ones where you have to play it that night, or at least next tribal,
yeah.
of course it's going to be there to spice things up because there was no guarantee that Kez would play her idol.
Yeah. I
Um,
just I just don't want to get advantage fatigue. Because again, they lose their impact at some point. And the way they're going right now, it is going to lose that impact very quickly. And
it has the opportunity.
idols being in play and being in the game and those advantages are always so interesting. But so far we've seen two. One had to be played at the tribal and the other one was anyway.
Yeah,
It just feels a bit, I don't know, it feels like they're forcing it a little too much. And I'd like to see them lay off that a little more. But of course we say all of this and can't really change any of it. No one
so
that
it's
can
already
change any
moving on.
of it is listening. So,
Yeah,
you know, I just think I'd want to see that next week. And I guess the challenge balancing we'll see a bit more of. And I think we'll sort of start to see more alliances form next week as well, because this week has
yeah.
been a bit easy on the alliance forming.
At least in the brains aspect, yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, was there anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so. Did you cover everything when you talked about like the softness of the season earlier? Because I know the family photos was the main draw for that. But I was wondering
Yeah,
if
it
there
was
was
just sort
anything
of that, and
else.
just no, that and sort of the food they're adding. If you want to add something a little more on the softness, I guess there is sort of the fact that there aren't the same amount of forageables that they would have in a tropical climate. They don't have
That's
coconuts and
fair.
papayas they can just pull off trees and eat. So I guess maybe they do have to throw in a little bit more of that sort of food in the rewards just to sort of keep them going. But other than that,
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything else to add.
Yeah. Well, I think next week is going to be one where we start to see the game rev up a little more, and I'm very excited to see it. And again,
Me too.
castaways, if any of them listened to the hour and 37 minutes of this so far, that's yeah. Um hit us up, evanandfreddy.com. We know Channel 10 probably has you all under NDAs right now until the end of the season, as we
Yeah,
saw with Phil. But that'd be kind of cool. And I guess we
yeah,
can also mention we have a Twitter and a Patreon. If you want to pay for this, the Patreon will get you early episodes, I believe. Evan, you're the one that set that up. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
yeah. Patreon tiers. Basically, sort of what we're offering is we're recording this on the Wednesday after the last night's final episode for the week.
Yeah.
So I believe there's a tier there that will get you the episodes as soon as we're done. Sort of mixing and editing them.
So usually
Um, you know,
Thursday, Friday, a day or two
usually
early.
Thursday. These would go up. Usually Saturday. That's their
Mm,
scheduled release date just before that episode on Sunday. Also, there's sort of tiers, to sort of get our thoughts, right after the episodes airs.
yeah.
And also, of course, a little bit of credits at the end of our podcast segment. But yeah,
We'll do a little
other
read
than
out of
that,
your name.
we'll read out. But yeah,
And we have the
other than
Twitter
that,
as well, which we might do
you got that.
some live tweeting from as well during the episode, maybe if we have burning thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, if you want to get in touch with us, you can either hit us up on Twitter or, check out the website, evanandfreddy.com. Little contact page there, or you can email us directly at mail@evanandfreddy.com.
yeah. And yeah, so all the links are at evanandfreddy.com, and we have the
Including
Patreon
that
there, the
Patreon
Twitter
one.
there, all of our podcast links, our email contact. And yeah, so I think this is our first actual episode as well, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah, we had a lot to unpack. I'm sure there'll be a lot more to unpack in future episodes.
Yeah, there's also
And
double the length of our first episode too.
And yeah, but we're also very curious to hear any of your thoughts. So again, if you want to hit us up, you can hit us up at DM us on Twitter, at Evan and Freddie, or the email,
YouTube comment section.
Yeah.
Well, because we did Chris, if you're watching this again for some reason, thanks for coming back. But yeah, just hit us up wherever we are at Evan and Freddie, evanandfreddie.com, and the YouTube channel, which has comments, which I don't think any podcast platforms actually have. But I guess with that, thanks for listening to an hour and 40 minutes.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah. We love you as always.
I know it's a lot.
Yeah. Hopefully this one was a bit more interesting because we weren't just cast profiles this time.
Yeah, we've got some actual good stuff to talk about. Yeah, but thanks for watching. For the people that have stuck this long, thanks for listening this long. We really appreciate that someone actually cares about what we have to say. If you did like what you heard, please share the podcast around. We'd love to get some more people listening.
That's always a bit of fun. And thanks very much for the early support, I guess, and listening to an hour and 41 minutes of two teenagers talk about Survivor with probably crappy audio.
Oh yeah, I need a better microphone for sure.
I guess that's what the Patreon money can go to, if we get any. But
if anyone's that generous.
If we do get any, yeah, we'll save up. But thank you very much, and next week will be one to watch, and we'll see you next Saturday or earlier.
We'll see you next Saturday, for more Talking Survivor with me, Evan, and Tim Freddie. Anyway.
Alright, see you later, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you next week.